Welcome back. This is the HHC Mortar Platoon, 2nd Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment, no slack. How to Mortar 101 Virtual Class Series. Today we'll be learning about mortars in the defense and engagement area development. My name is Staff Sergeant Nolan Hommel. To reference today's lesson, seek ATP 3-21.8, FM 3-21.21, and FM 7-90. To start, defense in depth. The purpose: to defeat an enemy attack by time, economize forces, or develop conditions favorable for offensive operations. Defensive actions alone are not decisive. They must be combined with or followed by offensive action. Deprive the enemy of initiative and create conditions to assume the offensive. The commander seeks to dictate where the fight will occur by preparing terrain with obstacles and defendable battle positions and other conditions, all while denying the enemy adequate intelligence. Some common tactical tasks. Neutralize. Enemy personnel or equipment are incapable of interfering with operations. Neutralization with mortar fire can be achieved against softer targets, including dismounted enemy troops or wheeled vehicles in the open, but is difficult to achieve against hardened targets, such as personnel with overhead cover or vehicles in deliberate fighting positions. 10% casualty or material destruction means that the target has been neutralized. Suppress. Limits to prevent an enemy from returning fire, observing, or maneuvering. The effects of suppressive fires are immediate, but they only last as long as the fires continue. Suppression is the key to any successful maneuver assault. A mortar element's high rate of fire and organizational responsiveness make it an excellent means to suppress enemy forces. Suppressing mortar fires allow friendly troops to successfully flank or perform offensive maneuver on enemy targets and close with the enemy. Destroy. Temporarily or permanently taking the enemy's will or means to fight. In essence, causing mass casualties and destroying equipment to the point of being unable or unwilling to fight. Mortars firing on things such as fire support systems, fuel and ammunition stocks, maneuvering personnel, and bridging equipment. 30% casualties or material destruction means the target has been destroyed. Obstacle. Any natural or man-made feature used to stop or slow enemy movement. Examples include roadblocks, downed trees, using explosives to blow roads, sea wire, damaging bridges, etc. Anything that will slow or halt enemy movement within the AO is considered an obstacle. Note that all obstacles are well planned and covered at all times by indirect fire elements, and they are defendable with small arms battle positions. To canalize, the commander restricts an enemy movement to a narrow zone by exploiting terrain, coupled with the use of obstacles, fires, or friendly maneuver. Contain. Tactical mission tasks that requires a unit to stop, hold, or surround an enemy. This causes the enemy to become widespread or centrally massed, making them vulnerable to mass attack or to be attacked along many weak defensive positions. Fix. A unit prevents an enemy from moving any part of its force from a specific location for a specific period of time. These tasks are dictated by the commander for specific effects wanted on any enemy target. A unit defends temporarily to create the proper conditions to resume an offensive attack and defeat the enemy decisively. The unit will defend, sustaining and defending areas and routes taken in previous offensive operations by emplacing infantry, armored vehicles, and crew-served weapon systems along main routes on decisive terrain and other high-threat areas. A commander can effectively use all available combat power to defend his area of operation. Delay. By denying advantageous terrain and resupply routes to the enemy. Withdraw. By withdrawing from taken territory to prevent loss of sustainment capability, equipment, and personnel. Counterattack. Shock and overwhelm an enemy offensive attack with well-planned small arms and indirect fires. Push the enemy out of previously seized terrain or destroy them in place. Security operations. Recon or patrol areas to provide a commander with early and accurate warning of enemy presence or threat of attack. Allows time and maneuver space for friendly troops to react. Economy of force tasks. Employing all available combat power in the most effective way possible. Allocating a minimum of essential combat power to secondary efforts basically stating that every smaller element within the unit has its own task and purpose within the commander's intent. All or several of these tasks will have to be executed to deceive or force the enemy into fighting in unfavorable conditions. The support that we provide as mortars in the defense is to allow refit for offensive operations. An example of mortars in the defense. In this example, artillery FPFs are allocated to companies in the most critical defensive positions. Mortar FPFs may be allocated to cover less critical avenues of approach that are in the same or indifferent AO. Once allocated to a company, that commander designates the precise FPF location where they can best augment the direct fire weapons. Figure 3.1 here shows how mortar FPFs are positioned to integrate them into the direct fire final protective lines of the defender. In the example, we have 3 platoon-sized elements, all with interlocking sectors of fire with their machine guns labeled with the thick black arrows. Also, we see 2 FPF planned targets marked with Alpha Bravo 2050 and Alpha Bravo 2305. Mortar final protective fire integrated with direct fire final protective lines. Mortar role in the defense. Mortars in support of defensive operations. To retain ground, providing timely and accurate fires on taken terrain being attacked by the enemy. Gain time. By denying enemy maneuver through area denial, such as destroying routes or creating obstacles through high explosive or white phosphorus fires, fixing the enemy in place, allowing friendly maneuver, or halting an enemy assault. Damage or defeat the enemy. Counterattack by fire to neutralize, suppress, or destroy the enemy in place using IDF as a spearhead. Can be followed up with infantry small arms and AT weapon systems and confirming the BDA on the ground. Screening friendly maneuver, providing screening fires with white phosphorus to cover friendly movement into defensive positions or counterattack. Deprive the enemy of defilade or decisive terrain. High-angle mortar fires provide for counterfires to enemy IDF or enemy approaching through hills or mountainous terrain. Illuminating the battlefield. Improve friendly visibility of a battlefield by providing illumination or IR illumination fires, effectively lighting the battlefield, allowing high explosive rounds to be better observed for adjustment, and allowing infantry higher visibility through night vision capabilities. Ground bursting illumination to mark enemy location to air and ground assets. To harass and interdict. Prevent the enemy from massing in decisive areas, effectively stopping enemy assault before it begins. By using HE or phosphorus rounds, mortars can deny area, cut off routes, prevent enemy consolidation, or push enemy back. Harass and interdict also play a large role in gaining time. The primary role of mortar elements is to provide a maneuver commander with immediately available, responsive, both lethal and non-lethal indirect fires in support of company, troop, battalion, or squadron maneuver that serve to reinforce direct fires during close combat. Mortar role in the defense continued. Here we're going to cover priorities of fire. So by assigning priority of fires, a commander is able to provide fires to a smaller element within the unit, generally a company moving in areas of high enemy threat. This allows for mortar platoons to effectively engage pre-planned targets. This allows for flexible shifting of fires of the mortar platoon as the situation develops. A mortar section with 6 or more guns can be given no more than 2 priority targets at any time. Example, Charlie Company has priorities of fire. Cougar 6 calls for fire on advancing enemy at long range. As the enemy continues to advance, the priorities of fire shift to Bravo Company, who is tasked with covering the enemy's most likely avenue of approach. As the enemy continues to maneuver closer, priorities change to meet them at the most advantageous terrain to defeat, suppress, or destroy them. These priorities will be given to the companies covering areas of the highest likely or known enemy threat. The biggest threat to the unit's mission will be fired on first and will constantly change as the battlefield situation is always evolving. The mortar platoon leader will constantly stay in contact with the TOC and FSO in order to battle track friendly and enemy locations, their movements, and to quickly change priorities of fire when necessary. Example: by providing indirect fires, mortars have effectively forced an enemy armored convoy to close its weapons hatches, suppressed its dismounts, and canalized the enemy movement, closing their formation in on itself. This allows friendly infantry the ability to deploy AT weapon systems and machine gun fire to suppress, neutralize, destroy enemy personnel and equipment. Illumination and obscuration in the defense. Illumination is useful in exposing an enemy at night. They allow the commander to confirm or deny the presence of an enemy without revealing the location of friendly direct fire weapons. Illumination fires are often coordinated with high explosive fires to expose and kill or suppress the enemy. Illumination fires may also be used as a deterrent effect through its use as a show of force or for area denial. Mortars have visible and infrared illumination rounds. Both can illuminate a designated area and are useful for signaling or marking targets to aid in the identification for other assets. Ground burst illumination rounds are useful to mark a target or reference point for visible infrared and thermal optics, though only for a short duration. Obscuration hampers an enemy's ability to observe and acquire targets and conceals friendly movement and activities. Obscuration fires do not neutralize or suppress an enemy, but they reduce the effectiveness of enemy fire and laser targeting systems. However, mortars can fire phosphorus rounds that provide smoke directly on an enemy position to both suppress and obscure, or they can fire phosphorus rounds between friendly forces and the enemy position to obscure observation. Mortar obscuration is effective for immediate response missions of limited scope and for short periods. The 81 and 120 millimeter mortars have effective obscuration rounds. Here are some examples of obscuration with Willie P and red phosphorus and illumination. The above left photo is continuous illumination used to light up the battlefield, firing illumination based on the time of flight and burn time, so as one round burns out, the next round bursts, providing continuous visibility. To the middle two photos, the above left, white phosphorus is being used to screen friendly movement and deny enemy observation. The above right, firing white phosphorus into what appears to be an enemy stronghold, destroying personnel and equipment. The above far right photo is air bursting red phosphorus in order to destroy enemy equipment and personnel with incendiary effects. Moving on to engagement area development. The engagement area is an area in which the commander intends to trap and destroy an enemy force with mass fires of all available weapons. The fire support planning is vital to achieving the commander's intent. Such factors as the number of indirect fire assets available, the training proficiency of the observers and firing unit, the enemy's direction and rate of march, trigger and intercept points, terrain analysis, anticipated enemy actions, and the amount of time the enemy can be expected to remain inside the engagement area. A lot of engagement area development will pertain to the fundamentals of the defense. 7 steps of engagement area development. Number 1, identify all likely enemy avenues of approach. Conducting initial reconnaissance. If possible, do this from the enemy's perspective along each avenue of approach into the area of operations or engagement area. Identifying key and decisive terrain to include locations of advantage over the enemy, as well as natural obstacles and choke points restricting their forward movement. Determining which avenues provide cover and concealment for the enemy while allowing him to maintain his tempo. 2. Determine likely enemy schemes of maneuver. Determine how the enemy will move through the AO and how quickly. What equipment will they bring? How to suppress or destroy. 3. Determine where to kill the enemy. Record target registration points. This allows for platoon elements to properly engage as the enemy moves through the engagement area. Step 4. Plan to integrate obstacles. As stated in the defense slides, use obstacles covered by appropriate weapon systems to engage the enemy at points of slower or condensed movement. Step 5. Emplace weapon systems. Appropriate weapon systems will cover all obstacles. This includes direct fire systems and mortars. 6. Plan and integrate direct fires. Determine the purpose of the fires and where their effects will be best achieved. An example, denying area with Willie P or HE, finding the purpose and type of fires, helps in establishing triggers. Triggers are known points in the enemy movement to initiate certain firing methods. Example, small arms or IDF on an enemy location. This will require an observation plan. Responsibility of infantry or FO to call for fires at triggers. Calling for fire includes accurate location, description, and speed of target. Ensuring all obstacles are covered by direct and indirect fire elements. Plan final protective fires and no fire areas for protection of observation posts and forward positions. 7. Rehearse the execution of operations in the engagement area. Using sand tables, radios, rock drills, or the actual engagement area, rehearse the operation, refine the plan, and make adjustments. As a mortar platoon, we can rehearse our actions with final protective fires. When we establish our MFPs, we also conduct engagement area development. Engagement area planning. In this illustration, a commander has identified a highly likely enemy avenue of approach, which is labeled with the large arrow. Where to kill the enemy, and then place obstacles at that location. The most opportune place in this scenario is at the obstacles where all 3 platoon-size elements have the ability to effectively engage the target. Defensive positions with direct fire weapons and FPFs have been in place and planned. This diagram shows 3 separate FPFs planned with 60mm mortars in the top right, 81mm mortars in the middle, and 105mm artillery planned at different locations in the defensive engagement area. This allows for final defenses of IDF if the enemy breaks through the obstacles and other direct fire positions in place along the avenue of approach. The main mission of mortars in engagement area development is to ensure full coverage of the engagement area with 1 or more sections. Our mission is to suppress, neutralize, or destroy enemy elements or positions using indirect fires. In a well-trained and disciplined unit, indirect fires are the key element to success and maneuverability for the unit throughout the area of operation. Our actions include battle tracking, having full awareness of all friendly and enemy movement throughout the AO in order to provide timely and accurate lethal or non-lethal fires when called upon. We must know every change to the situation as it occurs. Obscuration and screening, giving the proper weather conditions and allotted ammunition. White phosphorus and red phosphorus fires are a crucial element inside an engagement area, used to suppress, halt, fix, deny area, and allow friendly maneuverability upon trigger. Willie P and RP rounds produce incendiary, marking, obscuring, screening, and casualty-producing effects on the battlefield. We are a vital piece of any combat scenario. Illumination. As covered before, in hours of low visibility, Illum or IR are used to light the battlefield. IR being used to continue to limit the enemy's ability to locate battle positions while allowing forward operating troops to continue to engage under night vision goggles. Ground bursting for signaling and marking effects are crucial for friendly air assets. Coordinated illumination allows us, as mortars, to fire a potent mixture of illuminating and lethal HE rounds simultaneously. Echeloning fires. Starting with the largest weapons, depending on the range in front of forward troops, the commander will have planned fires from artillery down to 120mm, 81mm, and 60mm mortar systems, close air support, and finally small arms fire on the enemy, essentially softening the enemy's attack as they move further into the engagement area. In order for a unit to be successful against enemy attack, and mortars being a key element, we must be able to shoot, move, and repeat as needed. Firing from locations of defilade greatly provide for the safety and success of mortar firing within an engagement area. Even in deep defilade, max ranges of mortar systems are hardly affected. Planning with hire to move at certain triggers while using methods like the split section greatly improve the lethality of a mortar platoon and the unit as a whole. As a mortar platoon, expedient emplacement and displacement of mounted and dismounted systems is necessary. Defilade can be hard to find in some areas, however, anything works if the ground conditions are favorable to fire from ditches, berms, hills, and buildings. Any defilade, the height or greater than the system itself, will create double the dead space for the enemy to observe. This greatly depreciates the enemy's ability to counterfire with artillery. Shooting into the protection of the defilade or behind the mortar firing point. This forces the enemy to move into closer proximity with mortar systems, leaving them susceptible to direct fire or other defenses. In the lower example is shown an enemy artillery piece attempts to engage a mortar position in defilade. The artillery is not effective due to its low angle of fire and the tactical positioning of the mortar section. Review back through the material and discuss with your squad leader or section sergeant the next class coming up, tabulated mortar data.